And as a result, the kind of panic sort of circumstance that we had with LTCM and with the Asian debt crisis, along with Latin America, would replay themselves more or less along that playbook. And in those instances, that sort of tonic was very effective because we had a roughly 6-month period of time. Same thing with 1987. Okay, 1987 was a classic panic. You had about a 6-month period of time where everybody was on tenterhooks, and then things improved. And, Citibank, during a couple of these crises, has actually been functionally bankrupt. They've been underwater twice, and in both of the previous cases, extending and pretending for a year or so allowed them to get back on their feet and survive. The problem is that I don't see any evidence in the macro level economy that we're actually seeing the sort of improvement that's necessary for the people to get out of the hole. And that's just simply because the mathematics is, we've pushed the envelope too far. We are now seeing for the first time since the 1930s contraction in all areas of lending, with the exception of the federal government, which of course is borrowing like a drunken sailor. But everywhere else that you look, in commercial and industrial, in consumer credit, in financial products, as well as in mortgages, commercial real estate, doesn't matter where you look, you see that lending is actually contracting and doing so at a rate that exceeds what was happening in the early 1930s.
Was it difficult to take a long position last March given the underlying fundamentals?
Well, some, but not a lot. And here's, kind of the philosophical view of it is this. The end of the world only comes once. Okay? And more importantly, if you happen to call the end of the world correctly, you're not going to be able to collect on your bet. Okay? So when things look that bad, there is little downside risk to placing the contrary bet, because if you're wrong and the market totally collapses to the point that we lose civil order and everything else, money isn't going to mean anything anyway. You've either got enough guns and ammunition to take care of what you need to take care of and make sure you can put food on your table and keep it from the people who want to take it from you, or you don't, and the currency of the day, if you will, is not going to be denominated in dollars, gold, silver, or anything else. It's going to be denominated in your ability to protect what you have in terms of actual sustenance. So, that's the Mad Max scenario, but if it looks like that may be what's coming, you have to bet against it. simply because the financial assets don't mean anything if it happens. So, it really wasn't all that tough to do. It's much more difficult, and I took those positions down around 900 in the S&P, simply because at that point the overvaluation in the indices and the obvious nature of the fact that we were not seeing an improvement in the top line revenue growth made it essentially the same sort of situation we had in late 1999 when I published an article, gave an interview to one of the local papers in Chicago and said, you got to get out of the market. You got to get away from everything technology related because it's going to blow up. We don't know when, but it will. And we had the same sort of stupidity going on then. And people say, well, how long can it go on? And the answer is a long time. People tend to be dumb at those sorts of points. But when it ends, it's going to end very rapidly and in a way that you'll have absolutely no control over and no exit with. So, the argument was certainly on the long side, down around, the low 600, low and mid 600s. It ceased being so when we got up around 9 in the S&P, and it's even worse today.
I find it pretty frustrating to watch your interactions with Dennis Neal on CNBS. To me, he represents everything that's wrong with big media. There's a lack of civil dialogue. He talks over his guests, and he'll quickly cut short an interview if it's turning against him. Do you see talking heads such as Dennis to be a beneficial part of the news landscape, or are they utterly useless?
Well, I think they're worse than a useless distraction. My biggest problem with Dennis's show, and the reason I kept going back on there, okay, obviously I could have told them no, is that his entire appeal was not to facts and figures, it was to how he felt. Okay, the entire premise of the last few weeks of his show before it was canceled was Pax Americana. Well, it doesn't have anything to do with the facts. It doesn't have to do with whether or not the economy is actually improving. It has to do with whether or not you feel good and whether you're patriotic. What's that got to do with investing? Okay, investing is supposed to be about sussing out and ferreting out underpriced issues where you have an advantage against the people that are running these computer-based high-frequency trading systems. They're always going to be faster than you. What you need to be in order to win is to be smarter. So where's the value in that? Okay, and you've got the same thing going on now, with people like Steve Leisman. And they're still on there in the, in CNBC, and they still tout the same sort of thing. And yet there's a huge conflict of interest. You've got their corporate parent, General Electric, which has financed everything under the sun, from airplane engines, which is not a bad thing to finance, to people's flats in places like Poland and Estonia. I mean, for crying out loud, what's the exposure on their balance sheet? All right, I mean, GE was a participant in the TARP, okay, through their holding companies. So where's the balance and the journalistic integrity here? Look at the savagery that was visited on Rick Santelli when he started talking about tea parties. I just don't understand. I don't understand it. And the thing is this: what gets me more than anything else about the whole CNBC thing in general, and the financial media as a whole, not just them, but the financial media as a whole, is that it was only 10 years ago that they did the same thing to people back in 1999. All right, everything's wonderful. Kramer had his list of 10 stocks you have to buy, all new media stocks, all new technology stocks. Virtually every one of them went to zero. The ones that didn't were cut 3/4 or cut in half. And I mean, if you took a equal weight portfolio of money and put it in those stocks when he made that recommendation, just a couple of weeks before the NASDAQ blew up, if you still held those stocks today, you'd have essentially nothing. A few bucks, okay? And yet, this is not mentioned anywhere, all right? It's not that long ago. I understand people want to get on and promote their ideas, and that's perfectly okay. But let's have a little balance here, all right? Let's have some balance in the reporting that's being done. One of the prime examples that I have from that era was Downey. This is just, back in 07, 08, all right? Downey Savings and Loan, a thrift out in California that wrote a bunch of this option arm, these garbage mortgages, okay? Big participant in creating the bubble. Kramer was all over it you had to buy it because someone was going to take it out. It wasn't because he thought that they had a particularly strong business model. It was that someone was going to acquire them. That was the story. Okay. Well, that's not what happened. They went to zero. They blew up. And where is the realistic view on this stuff? I mean, there are times that he gets out there and he whips himself and this and that. Okay, fine. I understand the entertainment side of things. I don't have a problem with entertainment, but you have to delineate between entertainment and news. They're not the same thing. All right, and people are out there in the market with real money. This isn't monopoly money here that we're playing with. When I put trades on, I'm doing it with real hard-earned cash. When I lose real money, and so does everybody else. So I think you have to separate financial reporting and investigative journalism from, speculation. I mean, at least Kramer's show is appropriately named, Mad Money. I mean, what else would you call it, right? But let's separate entertainment television from financial television. I don't think they're the same thing. I don't think they should be in the same place.